Dominic Kashani, BBC News at the High Court.
Well, now to discuss all this, I'm joined by Jamil, Jaffer, ex-executive director of the National Security Institute at George Mason University, and you've also held many US intelligence positions in the US government. Thanks for being with us, Jamil. This has been described as a last-ditch attempt by Julian Assange to avoid extradition to the US, but you would like to see him returned here.
Absolutely. I mean, he obviously has violated U.S. law against obtaining, soliciting, and disclosing classified information knowingly. He's conspired with others to hack into computer systems and to break passwords and the like, and he should face justice for those violations.
Now, he would say he was doing all of that in the public interest, though. We saw some of what was exposed there just now, and he would say that that was ordinary journalistic practice. That argument was made by his lawyers today.
Well, that argument has been rejected repeatedly by the British authorities as well as by courts, but the reality is that if you talk to any ordinary journalist, Katrina, as you know, Julian Assange doesn't abide by any of the traditions of the journalistic profession, the ethics of the journalistic profession. He never redacted documents, never was careful about it, disclosed information that he knew would put people's lives at risk, by the way, including other journalists and human rights activists.
Well, the profession of journalism is changing, so it's not for me to say what is and isn't a journalist at this point. But his lawyers have also said today that this effort to prosecute him is politically motivated, and that his life would be a threat if he was returned to the US.
Well, the challenge here, of course, is that two different political administrations, two different parties in the U.S. have charged him and followed up on his prosecution. The British government, itself of a different political party, the like, has also rejected these appeals. So the idea somehow that there's political motivation here is not what's going on. And there's no chance his life's going to be at risk. He's going to a U.S. prison, just like anybody would, to the extent that any criminal, in a prison, has some level of risk, right? There are guards around to protect against that. But the idea that his life would be any more at risk than it is in a British prison today, it just simply makes no sense.
Well, the point they're making is a risk from state retaliation. They say they have evidence that there were efforts at the highest level to assassinate him.
Well, look, if the U.S. government wanted to assassinate him, right, everyone knew where he was for many years in the Ecuadorian embassy. The Ecuadorians actually kicked him out because he wasn't behaving appropriately there. The British eventually picked him up. He was on bail for a while until he violated his own bail conditions. So if that was the theory that the American government wanted to kill him, certainly easier to kill him abroad than in the United States. There are laws against that, obviously. The U.S. government would be violating its own laws if it were to do that.
There is bipartisan support at this point for returning him here.
Absolutely. Strong bipartisan support in the United States across multiple administrations, across many members of the political parties in both houses of Congress. Julian Assange has violated American law repeatedly, knowingly, over and over again, and now should be held accountable for that.
Well, that will have to be proven in a court of law. We can't say that for a fact.
That's right.
Here.
Allegedly. That's correct.
He's innocent until proven guilty,
That's right.
like everybody else. If he fails at this effort in the UK, he has one more avenue open to him through the EU. But failing that, how do you see things playing out if he is returned here?
Well, look, I think what will end up happening is if he is returned here is he'll come into U.S. custody in England. He'll be handed over to U.S. authorities. He'll be flown to the United States. He'll be held in federal prison pending the disposition of his charges. His lawyers undoubtedly will file similar claims in the U.S. courts that they've filed abroad, including his rights as a journalist, if he has rights of free speech. He's not a U.S. citizen, so there's an open question, but he's being prosecuted in the United States, so he'll assert those rights. And then he'll be tried ultimately if he is not able to get any of those other ways out of court. And then there will be a question if he's convicted where he should serve that sentence. The Australians have said he should serve his sentence, if any, in Australia. That'll be another issue for the U.S. government to deal with if and when, as you point out, he's convicted of the charges and held accountable.
So if that does happen and he is extradited here, that sounds like a very long process that you're describing there. This already has lasted many, many years.
That's right. The process itself will take a long time. He'll have many appeals to the courts of appeals and the U.S. Supreme Court eventually. And so, like any criminal defendant, he has all the rights that appertain to him in those courts. And so he'll have a very fair trial and a very fair process all the way through, assuming he comes here and assuming if he is convicted.
We'll wait to see what happens in the UK courts. Jamil, Jaffer, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks.